Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome back to the KoreKara podcast. So today we are going to be doing something a little different. So, you can see my face, you can see Eric's face. Welcome to our face reveal.
That's not what you expected.
Sudden. Yeah, no chance it was what you guys are expecting. That's all we know.
We're gonna try a new format where we have the video, and we're also gonna condense the podcast into about 10 minutes of the best parts. But if you still want to listen to the whole podcast, we're still going to be uploading it onto Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and all the other podcasting platforms. And as always, we have bonus clips on Patreon if you want to support the podcast.
We have a great conversation coming up with Lindie. We talk about her Japanese journey, time in Japan, and a lot of random things that just kind of came up during our fun conversation. So stay tuned. Hope you enjoy our faces, hopefully. And we'll see you soon.
Lindie, can you give us a quick background of who you are and where you're at today?
Sure. My name is Lindie. I'm South African. I'm currently working as a UX designer in Singapore. And before that, I lived in a few different countries, including on and off in Japan. And my favorite thing to do outside of design is learn all the languages.
All the languages. So
how many languages is that?
Not all of them yet. So there's 7,000 languages in the world, but I speak 0.3% of that. No, I've been learning Korean for about 12 years now, and that's kind of what spurred me on to learn Japanese, in the sense that they're quite similar grammatically and vocabulary-wise. They both stem from Chinese, so there's Korean, Japanese, and Mandarin that I speak a bit. And then French, and I recently started Spanish. My home language is Afrikaans, and I'm actively learning Hungarian and dabbling in Tagalog and Vietnamese.
Well, the way you started, I was interested. I thought we were about to have the first person on the podcast to speak all 7,000 languages.
That's the goal. Just kidding.
Yeah, so you said you got interested in learning languages through Korean?
So I had a lot of Korean friends when I lived in Dubai, and when I moved back to South Africa, my mom saw an ad in the newspaper for free Korean lessons, and I was like, what is this, another weird idea of hers? So I just tried it, because at that point I'd only ever taken Urdu, Arabic, and French as school subjects, so I never thought of language learning as a hobby or something you can do outside of school. But once I took Korean and visited Korea and became more fluent in the language, I think one of the ways I sort of discovered the Japanese language, not I didn't know it existed, but became more interested in it, is because a lot of Korean artists release Japanese versions of their songs. And I listened to a few and I was like, oh, this sounds really great. And I'm noticing a few similar words. And I just started dabbling in it. I had a friend who, she used to teach me how to write katakana. I think we were in grade 7, and we used to pass notes to each other, which we wrote in English but using katakana. We thought we were super no one can understand what we're doing. It was terrible. I would cringe if I had to read that now. But yeah, I guess Korean was kind of the entryway into more self-study languages for me.
Right. Yeah, kind of going back on how you said you started learning Korean and then you got fluent in Korean, what was the actual process of becoming fluent in Korean?
So that's kind of up for discussion because everyone has a different definition of fluency. I think that it's a lifelong journey. Learning languages, you're never going to get to a point where you're okay, I'm done, I can move on, right? So I'm not sure if I would consider myself 1,000% fluent in Korean, but I'm definitely comfortable enough to be able to work in a Korean company and so forth. But the concept of fluency aside, it's definitely a long process. I think we're so used to instant gratification, and we watch a lot of YouTube videos of people learning this language in 3, 4, 5 months and I'm fluent, and we kind of expect it to take less time than it actually does. And what we don't see is the process behind it. So Korean, it took me a few years to feel, comfortable and confident enough to speak without stressing about not knowing. But the process was a lot of immersion. I was constantly, everything I watched or listened to or read was completely in Korean. And I used quite a similar process for Japanese. I was grateful enough for the opportunity to have been able to be in Japan for most of my intensive Japanese studies, which wasn't the case with Korean. But it doesn't matter if you're in the country or not, as long as anything you consume is in that language. So you could be a complete beginner, but the more you constantly hear things, the more you're going to be starting to recognize words, improving your pronunciation. It's just a lot of immersion.
So does that mean like when you went to Japan, you already were like pretty confident?
So my parents lived in Japan for 4 years, and I visited there during my university holidays over the span of that time. So the very first time I visited in Japan in 2013, I could barely speak. And then the last time I was there, like 2017, 2018, I was a lot more comfortable. So my very first internship, I don't even know how I did it, but the last one I was way more comfortable. I could do all my presentations in Japanese.
Speaking of the Nomikai culture, I mean, you've been through a couple of internships over in Japan. How would you say that was for you? Because you said you're mainly Japanese companies, not very much English leeway you could really go off of. So how was that like?
The Nomikai culture specifically?
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
That was I'm not sure if I would say it was a culture shock because I knew about it before, but actually experiencing it and the frequency of how these Nomikais happen maybe every day or every week. At first I was like, oh, this is cool, you know, like we're all hanging out after work, there's snacks, there's drinks, but at that time, like I still don't really drink a lot of alcohol. And I just thought it was an awesome opportunity to be able to mingle and practice my Japanese. But I started getting concerned, like, are these people sleeping enough? Are they spending enough time with their family? And I remember walking to the office one morning and my coworker was wearing exactly the same outfit as the previous day, sitting in the same spot. And I was like, did you go home? He's like, nope, been here since yesterday morning. Oh, it's tough. They work really, really long hours.
Speaking of like long hours, do you think those are productive hours, or do you think there's a lot of like looking busy sort of stuff?
I wasn't gonna say it, but you asked, so yes. Again, I can't, generalize a whole culture or company, but definitely from my experience, it's working slow. Now, slow could be a good thing. It could mean you're extremely detailed, you're avoiding problems, but things move very, very slowly in the company. And if you're naturally a fast worker, you're gonna have to slow yourself down. And like you said, look busy. Decisions can't really be made unless there's a whole panel of people who agree on it. It might be a bit looser in the design industry where you have a bit more creative freedom. But it was new and interesting for me to figure out that, like, wow, the entire company has to agree on this single packaging design. I remember the feedback I got after my internship was, you are an incredibly fast worker. So I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, because it could mean you are like hasty and not detailed, or it could mean like we're so used to working very, very slowly and it's amazing how much you can get done when you don't look busy. But I think it differs from person to person. The most important thing, though, is to be respectful to the culture you're in, right? I can't go in there and be like, come on, guys, you're slow, or, I had to adapt to that. So I had to be like, okay, they've given me 2 tasks for the week. I cannot finish both of them in one day, even though I technically could. So how can I space this out and live as they are living, or work as they are working, and not kind of bring my own ways or ideals into an already established situation?
Did you have any go-to things to do to kind of make yourself go slower, kind of take up some time?
Oh, that's an interesting question. I feel like
the mouse speed.
That's so smart. Well, maybe my brain speed was decreased because everything was in Japanese, right? So if I was on Photoshop, all the controls and stuff were in Japanese. So of course I had to slow down to read a bit. So maybe I was lucky.
It was all part of the language learning process.
Definitely, definitely.
around when would you say you kind of learned more and more to, I guess, like a proficient enough point where you felt comfortable?
I don't think there's a point, at least during my time in Japan, where I felt confident in the sense of like I can do anything. I read this quote, let me see, I think I wrote it down here. More often than not, being brave means doing it scared. I feel like that was the setting for a lot of, I mean, I did a ton of interviews there for the internship. I was paranoid for each interview, so I don't think I probably reached a level good enough to be able to communicate, but there was always that feeling of, am I gonna make a mistake? Am I gonna, you know? So, like I said at the start of this, it's always still like a long process to learn a language, so I can't say I'm, 1,000% fluent. But I would say there came a point maybe after the 2 or 3 year mark when I was like, I can do this. I can go out on my own. If I get lost, I would be able to find my way home. It's not really part of Japanese culture, but if a stranger were to come up to me and say hi, I would be totally okay to talk. The very first time I went to Japan, I just knew the basics, like how to introduce myself, how to say where I'm from, how to ask how much something costs, like any beginner course Japanese textbook level. And you only really understand the nuances of the language and the culture once you've either been there for a while or immersed it in a long time. So concepts like I mentioned earlier, honne and tatemae, or just cultural nuances that you won't learn in the textbook, those take a while, a few years to get used to.
A lot of our listeners are currently studying Japanese and really in the thick of it. So I guess during your time, especially when you were mainly focusing on Japanese, how would you say your kind of time breakdown was? How much time were you spending? How much was it immersion? And how, I guess, what were your kind of study habits at the time?
I think it depended where I was. So if I was back in South Africa at university, of course I had to focus most of my time on my projects. So I would study Japanese probably only on weekends, or sometimes at the library if I was studying for a art history exam. I would take a break and go through some Japanese. I would read a few flashcards on the way to campus. But when I was in Japan, I would spend a lot more of my free time. When I was not going out and exploring, I would be at home studying. So I think immersion mostly came from Japan, just, being on the subway and hearing it, or buying a sandwich at the convenience store and having to use the language. The more you're exposed to that over the span of a few years, you're gonna learn a lot faster. I always say that I learned Japanese much faster than I did Korean because I was in that environment. But you don't need to be in that environment, you can create it for yourself. So back when I was in South Africa, I would just find a textbook that I really liked and try and work through a few chapters a month. I would divide the book up, see how many chapters there were, and decide by when do I want to finish it and split my time up there. And I also made it fun for myself. Like I downloaded an app where you could do like a little live stream or radio broadcast in Japanese, and that way I got to practice it and still make friends and have fun and have people call in and we could talk together in Japanese. So if you find something you enjoy, it makes it a lot easier and faster to learn.
And I mean, we talked about culture shock briefly a little bit earlier, but I mean, of course you went to Japan, and a lot of it was a lot of intrigue initially before you actually had the chance to travel there. But when you actually got there, what were some of the other things that kind of just shook you after spending so much time? I mean, of course, a lot of time in South Africa, but many other countries as well.
I would say the attention to detail. Everything is planned out to the last minute. Everything is accounted for. Everything is on time. It's amazing. My dad and I used to make a joke when the train was more than a minute late. We'd be like, oh my goodness, this country is falling apart, because it's so rare for even the train to be a single minute late. Another funny story is we were waiting for a bakery to open. There was this really nice donut shop that opened near my dad's office, and they said they open at 10 a.m. So we were there like loitering around at 9:48 because we had just stumbled across it, and we saw everything was ready. They were standing at the counter. You know, we could have walked in, but it was 9:49, 9:50. Time went on. They weren't even like cleaning or preparing. And my dad got so impatient. I was so embarrassed. I'm all for like, you know, when in Rome, do as the Romans do. My dad is like, come on, like they should be open by now. And he was standing there like waving at the door, and I was just cringing. I'm like, Dad, just wait until 10 a.m. As soon as it turned 10 a.m., they were like, you know, ignoring our antics at the door. As soon as it turned 10 a.m., they were like, "Irashaimase, welcome, you know, let's get some donuts." Yes! I was like, it's amazing. You can see there are customers outside. You literally have nothing else you need to prepare, but 10 a.m. is 10 a.m., so it was on time. Yeah! It was amazing. They put so much detail and effort into anything. If you buy a package, you could buy some socks and it'll be the most beautifully wrapped pack of socks you've ever seen in your life. Everything is taken very seriously and with a lot of attention to detail. I really like trains, and I think Japan is the best country to be in if you're like densha otaku. So there's like a store where the entire floor is just train merch. You can buy the jingles from the train lines, you can buy videos of the footage, the scenery of the trains, you can buy merch of the train stations. I was like, oh, this is really train heaven. Where else in the world will you find this?
So is this the reveal on the KoreKara podcast that Lindie is a big fan of trains?
Yes, it's true. My apartment here in Singapore does look out over a train station, and when I saw that, when I could see that I could see the train line going in and out, I was like, yeah, this is it. This is where I'm gonna live.
It was all part of the plan.
Yeah.
I mean, how much train merch do you have? That's the next question that just came up to my mind now.
It's like the camera turns back and it's all...
You really want to expose me like that?
Everywhere.
Oh my gosh, I have my backpack next to me, and all of the little tags that hang off are like train station names in Japan.
Do you have a favorite train station then?
I really like Shin-Okubo in Tokyo because that was Koreatown. So it's like a nice, like, hey, this is like a familiar language and food, but it's still Japan. I was like, well, Shin-Okubo is like the coolest place in Tokyo for me. And then I also have our home station. We used to live on the Ginza line in Aoyama Ichome, so Aoyama Ichome tag is also there.
we did have an episode where we were talking about trains, and then somehow we just got into toilets because, of course, as the prime foundation of technology in Japan, you have the Japanese toilet with the whole remote on the side, every possible function necessary.
Machine learning.
Machine learning.
That was the best, man. I kind of miss that, you know, in winter. There's nothing more you want than a warm toilet seat, right?
Oh yeah. That's a
and
luxury that I miss.
It just opens. It knows when you're there.
Oh no!
How's it going?
Oh, the machine learning is insane. Like exactly at 10 a.m. when it opens.
Oh no!
It like buzzes. It's like, where are you? It's like an alarm.
You're off schedule.
But I mean, it's really interesting kind of having all this experience kind of working in different cultures, different environments. Do you have any advice to any of our listeners who are interested in maybe the whole traveling to, I guess we can talk about Japan specifically, or maybe studying Japanese?
Yeah, I would recommend just doing your research beforehand about cultural practices. There's a lot of, you know, sometimes tourists on the train who speak extremely loudly, and that might be normal for them, but it's really disturbing when in Japan everybody's used to speaking softly on the train. So small things like that, even just a simple Google search can tell you what to expect in terms of cultural behaviors, and it can really make your experience so much more delightful. When you are respectful, people are going to be more open to, you know, chatting to you, and the Japanese are very, very friendly and hospitable. So even if you do make cultural mistakes, they're gonna forgive you and they're gonna be nice. But I recommend from your side also just researching what is acceptable. Try not to be overwhelmed by the amount of resources there are out there. There are so many textbooks and apps and methods, even just compared to 5 or 8 years ago. And I think people spend a lot of time trying to think, what's the perfect way to learn Japanese? What's the perfect app I need? But just start somewhere. Even if you have just one app or one book, stick through it and rather stick to that, because you're going to waste your time trying to plan out the perfect method instead of just starting with something. And keep at it. It's going to get hard. Japanese is not an easy language, but try and keep in mind why you're learning in the first place. It always helps to have a goal in mind, whether that be, wanting to travel to Japan, or having Japanese friends, or wanting to understand subtitles, or not, rather not watch with subtitles when you're watching anime. As long as you have a goal in mind, be consistent every single day, do it in small steps, don't give up, even if it gets hard.
What can our KoreKara listeners and new Lindie fans over here come to expect soon?
Yeah, well, I try and release videos once a week, so you can definitely keep expecting videos on my language learning progress. I'm always happy to do book and app reviews as well, so if anyone wants to recommend an app or something I should check out, I like doing those. Otherwise, I continue posting my tips on my blog, and most of my content is very based on what people want to see and want to recommend. So if people want to see more Japanese content, just hit me a DM or an email and I'll get to it.
Perfect. And speaking to that, where can everyone go and find you, Lindie?
Sure. Well, my website is lindiebotes.com. That's LINDIBOTES. And on Instagram, it's also Lindie Botes. Twitter, Lindie BEE. And then YouTube, you just type in Lindie Botes, you'll find my channel.
Perfect. We got every avenue to find Lindie, so you guys have no excuse now.
Oh, it's gonna sound cheesy, but just keep going with your Japanese when it gets hard, and remember why you started in the first place. And it's always, there's a famous quote from Kato Lom, who's a Hungarian polyglot. She said, language is the only thing worth knowing, even poorly. So even if you just know 3 words in Japanese, it's still going to change your experience in your life so much more. Everybody's going to be so much more welcoming to you. So even if you feel like you're struggling, it's not for nothing. Keep going, and Japanese is just going to change your life.
You love to hear it. And with that, we will catch you on the next one. Thank you guys for listening. We'll see you later. Peace.
Peace.